Today we're going over the most insane gangster deaths in history. Number 1, Bonnie and Clyde. It's May 23rd, 1934, and Bonnie Parker is sitting in the passenger seat of a stolen tan Ford V8, eating a sandwich while her boyfriend, Clyde Barrow, drives way too fast down a dusty Louisiana back road. She's 23 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with strawberry blonde hair and a cigarette tucked behind her ear. Clyde's 25, lean and wiry, with slicked back hair and that cocky grin he always has when he thinks he's gotten away with something. They have no idea they're about to be turned into Swiss cheese. See, Bonnie and Clyde were actually just small-time thieves who robbed gas stations and grocery stores. Most heists netted them less than $50, but what they lacked in criminal genius, they made up for in murdering cops. At least 9 law enforcement officers by this point, and that made them the most hated criminals in America. You're probably thinking these two were some kind of glamorous Robin Hood types, right? Nah, that was just good publicity. Bonnie was obsessed with fame. She wrote poetry about their outlaw life and sent it to newspapers. She literally romanticized their death, writing about how they die young and beautiful in some tragic blaze of glory. She imagined herself as this legendary figure, frozen in time at the peak of her beauty. What she didn't know was how brutally unromantic their actual death would be. Here's where things get interesting. The man hunting them was a former Texas Ranger named Frank Hammer, 6'3", built like a brick wall, with ice-cold eyes and a reputation for being absolutely relentless. This guy had survived over 50 gunfights in his career. He was basically the Terminator of Texas law enforcement, and Bonnie and Clyde had made him look like an idiot for months. Hammer took it very personally. For 102 days straight, Hammer and his 5-man posse tracked them across 5 states. They slept in their cars, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and studied their patterns. And Hammer discovered something crucial. Bonnie and Clyde visited family in Louisiana every few weeks like clockwork, so he set the perfect trap. On the morning of May 23rd, Hammer and his men hide in the bushes along Highway 154 in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. They've got rifles, shotguns, and Browning automatic rifles, the kind of firepower you'd use to stop a tank. One of his men, Henry Methvin's father, stands by his truck on the side of the road, pretending to have engine trouble. It's baked, and Bonnie and Clyde are about to take it. Around 9:15 a.m., their tan Ford V8 comes cruising down the highway at about 85 miles per hour. Clyde always drove like a maniac. When he spots Methvin's father by the broken down truck, he slows down. The moment the car drops below 15 miles per hour, Frank Hammer steps out from the bushes. Halt! Clyde's hand goes toward the sawed-off shotgun lying across his lap, and that's when the world explodes. 6 lawmen open fire simultaneously. The sound is deafening, like thunder that won't stop. Shotgun blasts, rifle cracks, the rapid rat-tat-tat-tat of Browning automatic rifles shredding metal. The Ford V8 jerks violently as bullets punch through the doors, the hood, the windows, the roof. Bonnie doesn't even have time to drop her sandwich. The first volley hits Clyde in the head and chest, probably 4 or 5 rounds within the first second. His body slumps forward, foot sliding off the brake. The car rolls forward maybe 10 feet before dropping into a ditch, but the shooting doesn't stop. The lawmen keep firing, reloading, firing again. Glass explodes in glittering showers. Metal tears and twists. The smell of gunpowder is so thick, it stings their eyes. Brass shell casings are flying through the air, pinging off rocks, piling up in the dirt around the shooter's feet. The car is literally jumping from the impact, bouncing on its suspension as round after round slams into it. 30 seconds. That's how long it lasts. 30 seconds of continuous gunfire that sounds like the world ending. Finally, silence. Smoke hangs in the air. The lawmen approach slowly, weapons still raised, half expecting Bonnie and Clyde to come out shooting like they always did. They'd seen these two shoot their way out of impossible situations before, but when they get close enough to look inside the car, they know immediately that's not happening. The inside of the Ford looks like someone painted it red. Blood on the seats, the dashboard, the ceiling, pooled on the floor, splattered across what's left of the windows. Both bodies are slumped over, completely still. Bonnie is still holding her sandwich, half eaten, her hand frozen in that position. Later, when they count the damage, the numbers are absolutely insane. The car had over 100 bullet holes. You could literally see through it in some places. The windshield was just gone, completely shattered. The tires were blown out. The seats were shredded to ribbons. And the bodies? Approximately 50 bullets hit Bonnie, around 50 hit Clyde. 100 bullets between two people. That's not law enforcement, that's personal. When they finally pulled the bodies out, and I say pulled because they were so riddled with bullets they were barely holding together, Bonnie's face was torn apart. Clyde wasn't much better. The local undertaker said preparing the bodies for viewing was nearly impossible because there were just too many holes to patch. The photos taken at the scene, the ones the newspapers wanted to run, most were too graphic to publish. This wasn't a romantic, beautiful death. This was a massacre. They had to carefully select which images wouldn't make readers vomit. Bonnie had written in her poetry about dying young and beautiful, about being remembered as this tragic, romantic figure. She imagined they'd go out in some poetic blaze of glory, maybe a final shootout where they died in each other's arms. Still beautiful, still defiant. The reality? She was turned into ground beef by 6 furious lawmen who unloaded 130 rounds into her and her boyfriend. Her face was so destroyed, the undertaker struggled to make her recognizable. Her body had so many bullet wounds, they lost count. The woman who wanted to be famous for her beauty and romance became famous for being completely obliterated by gunfire, for being so thoroughly shot up that her own mother could barely identify her. And Clyde, the guy who thought he was so smart, so fast, so untouchable, he died with his hands still reaching for a gun he never got to fire. His foot halfway off the brake pedal, probably confused about why his car was suddenly full of holes. What an insane way to die. Carmen Galante. It's July 12th, 1979, and a stocky, barrel-chested man with slicked-back gray hair and cold, dead eyes walks into Joe and Mary's Italian-American restaurant in Bushwick, Brooklyn. He's 69 years old, wearing expensive clothes, a nice t-shirt, pressed slacks, polished leather shoes, and clenched between his teeth, as always, is a fat Cuban cigar. His name is Carmen Galante, and he's the most feared mob boss in New York City. They call him the Cigar, or Lilo, and even other mobsters think he's insane, which is saying something when you're talking about professional killers. See, Galante was actually the acting boss of the Bonanno crime family, one of New York's 5 families, and this guy, he was ruthless. We're talking about a man who personally murdered somewhere between 80 to 100 people over his career, and those are just the ones we know about. He'd shoot you in the face for looking at him wrong. He once bit off a police officer's finger during an arrest. A finger. At 69 years old, most men are thinking about retirement, maybe playing with grandkids. Galante was thinking about becoming boss of all the families. The capo di tutti capi, the boss of bosses. And he was willing to kill anyone who stood in his way. Throughout the late 1970s, Galante had been systematically murdering rival mobsters, taking over heroin territories, and generally acting like he owned all of New York. The other crime families were getting really tired of his behavior. You're supposed to get permission before you start killing other families' guys. That's like mafia rule number 1. But Galante, he didn't care. He thought he was untouchable. You're probably thinking, wait, wasn't he worried about getting whacked? Oh, he was paranoid as hell. The guy traveled everywhere with bodyguards, multiple bodyguards. He sat with his back to the wall at restaurants. Classic mob paranoia move. He trusted almost nobody. His own men joked that he probably slept with one eye open and a gun under his pillow. But here's the catch. When you're that paranoid, that violent, that greedy, eventually even your own people turn on you. On this particular July afternoon, Galante arrives at Joe and Mary's for lunch. This is his regular spot. Family-owned, quiet, in his neighborhood. He's eaten here 100 times. He feels safe here. He's got his bodyguards with him, Leonard Coppola and Giuseppe Turano, both trusted guys who've been with him for years. plus his cousin, Giuseppe Galante, is there too. They walk through the restaurant and sit down at a table on the back patio, outdoors, away from prying eyes. It's a beautiful summer day, perfect for eating outside. Galante settles into his chair, lights up his cigar, this big, fat Cuban that costs more than most people make in a week, and they order their food. Classic Italian fare, pasta, wine, bread with olive oil, the works. For the next hour or so, they're eating, talking, and enjoying themselves. Galante's cigar is going strong, smoke drifting up into the afternoon air. He's relaxed, probably the most relaxed he's been in months. No business talk, just four guys having lunch on a nice summer day. Around 2:45 p.m., three men walk through the restaurant and out into the patio. They're wearing ski masks, and they're carrying shotguns. Before anyone can process what's happening, before Galante can reach for the gun he always carries, the three masked men open fire at point-blank range. Boom! The first shotgun blast catches Galante square in the chest. The impact literally lifts him out of his chair, throws him backwards like he's been hit by a truck. He lands on his back on the patio, arms spread wide. Boom, boom. Leonard Coppola's head basically explodes. Blood and brain matter spray across the table, the wall, the pasta. He's dead before his body hits the ground. Boom. Giuseppe Turano tries to run, makes it maybe 3 steps before a shotgun blast catches him in the back. The pellets punch through his spine, his lungs. He goes down face first, blood pooling beneath him immediately. The whole thing takes maybe 5 seconds. Just a few shotgun blasts and it's over. The three masked men calmly turn around, walk back through the restaurant like they're leaving after a nice meal, and disappear into a waiting car outside. They're gone before anyone inside even realizes what's happened. On the patio, 3 men are dead. The smell of gunpowder mixes with the smell of Italian food and blood. This weird, nauseating combination. Blood is everywhere, pooled on the ground, splattered across the walls, soaking into the tablecloth. Wine glasses are knocked over. Pasta dishes are scattered. Food is still steaming on the plate. And Carmine Galante, he's on his back, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. There's a massive hole blown through his chest. You can see through it in places. Blood is spreading out beneath him in a dark pool, soaking into the concrete. His arms are spread wide, like he's trying to hug the sky. His expensive shirt is shredded and soaked red. His polished shoes are still pointing in different directions. And clenched between his teeth, still there in his mouth, is his cigar. That's right, the cigar is still in his mouth. When the police arrive 10 minutes later and the crime scene photographers start taking pictures, they capture what would become one of the most iconic mob death photos of all time. Carmine the Cigar Galante lying dead on his back with his trademark Cuban cigar still clenched between his teeth. The photo makes the front page of newspapers across the country. It becomes the image everyone thinks of when they picture a mob hit. The dead gangster with cigar still in his mouth, like he died mid-puff. But here's the sneaky part. Those bodyguards who were supposed to protect him, the ones who sat down to lunch with him, yeah, they were in on it. The hit was ordered by the commission, the ruling body of all 5 families, because they were sick of Galante trying to take over everything. But it was carried out with the cooperation of his own Bonanno family members. His own people set him up. They brought him to the restaurant, they told him it was safe. They sat down to eat with him, and then they let the hit squad walk right past them. Coppola and Turano were killed because they were actually loyal to Galante. They didn't know it was coming. But the other associates at the table, the ones who went to the bathroom right before the shooting, they mysteriously survived without a scratch. Convenient timing, right? When investigators started piecing together what happened, they realized the whole thing had been planned for weeks. The hit squad knew exactly where Galante would be sitting. They knew exactly when to come. They knew which bodyguards were in on it and which ones weren't. It was a perfect setup. Carmine Galante spent his entire life building this image. The tough guy with the cigar, the ruthless killer, the untouchable mob boss. He murdered dozens of people. He terrorized New York. He genuinely thought he was invincible because he'd survived this long, and he died being betrayed at lunch by his own organization, with his cigar still in his mouth, becoming the exact stereotype he'd performed his entire life. He literally became a poster for dead mobster, the image everyone thinks of when they picture a mob hit. If you ask me, there's something darkly hilarious about a guy's entire identity being wrapped up in smoking cigars, and then dying with one still clenched in his teeth. Like, he committed to the bit until the very end. Number 3, John Dillinger. It's July 22nd, 1934, and a lean, handsome man with slicked back dark hair and a confident smile walks down Lincoln Avenue in Chicago toward the Biograph Theater. He's wearing a white shirt, gray pants, a straw boater hat, and round wire-rimmed glasses. He looks like just another guy going to see a movie on a Sunday night. But this isn't just another guy. This is John Dillinger, public enemy number 1, the most wanted man in America. At 31 years old, Dillinger has the kind of face that should be in the movies himself. Sharp jawline, bright eyes, that classic 1930s leading man look. Women love him. The public is obsessed with him. He's basically a celebrity. They call him Gentleman John because unlike other gangsters, he's got charm. During bank robberies, he'd joke with customers, help ladies over the counter, supposedly never shot civilians. The newspapers ate it up. See, Dillinger was actually a bank robber who became a folk hero during the Great Depression. While millions of Americans were losing their homes and farms to banks, here was this guy robbing those same banks and making the authorities look like idiots. People loved it. He robbed approximately 24 banks and 4 police stations over just 14 months. That's almost 2 robberies per month. And the amount of money he stole? Over $300,000. That's about $7 million in today's money. But you're probably thinking, okay, but didn't he eventually get caught? Oh, he got caught multiple times. He just kept escaping. This guy broke out of prison using a fake gun carved from wood and colored with shoe polish. He literally fooled armed guards with a piece of wood. And when they locked him up in Crown Point, Indiana, in a jail they called Escape Proof, he broke out again. This time he stole the sheriff's car on the way out. The escapes made J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, absolutely furious. Hoover had spent years building this image of the FBI as this ultra-professional, unstoppable crime-fighting force. And here's this bank robber with a movie star face, making them look like the Keystone Cops. Hoover took it personally. He assigned over 40 FBI agents specifically to catch Dillinger. He wanted him dead or alive. Preferably dead. But here's the best part. Dillinger loved the attention. He loved being famous. He loved reading about himself in the newspapers, seeing his wanted posters on every post office wall, and he especially loved going to the movies to watch gangster films. Which brings us to tonight. Dillinger had recently gotten plastic surgery to change his appearance, had some moles removed, altered his fingerprints with acid, and tried to change his face. It didn't really work that well. He still looked like himself, just slightly different, but he thought it worked. So he'd been living relatively openly in Chicago, going out to restaurants and seeing movies, living the life. On this particular Sunday evening, he decides to see a movie called Manhattan Melodrama at the Biograph Theater. It's a gangster film starring Clark Gable about, and this is perfect, a criminal's downfall. The poster shows Gable as a well-dressed gangster facing justice. Dillinger probably saw himself in that poster. What Dillinger doesn't know is that the FBI knows he's in Chicago. They know he's going to that theater, and they know exactly what time he'll be walking out. How do they know all this? Because his girlfriend's friend, a woman named Anna Kumpanash, sold him out to the FBI for $5,000 and a promise not to deport her back to Romania. That's right, public enemy number 1 was betrayed for $5 grand and a green card. Honestly, not a bad deal. The FBI made Anna a simple offer. Wear a red or orange dress to the theater so we can identify which woman is with Dillinger, and we'll pay you and let you stay in America. Anna agreed immediately. She'd known Dillinger for like 3 weeks. Why would she risk her life for him? So on this Sunday night, FBI agent Melvin Purvis and approximately 20 other agents surround the Biograph Theater. They're packing serious firepower: pistols, Thompson submachine guns, shotguns. They're positioned at every exit, on rooftops, in cars on the street. They're not taking any chances. This guy has shot his way out of situations before. The plan is simple: wait for him to exit the theater, positively identify him, and take him down. Dead or alive, preferably dead. Around 8:30 p.m., Dillinger walks into the Biograph Theater with two women: Anna in her bright orange dress, she couldn't find a red one, and his actual girlfriend Polly Hamilton, who has no idea what's about to happen. He buys 3 tickets, 75 cents total, gets some popcorn, and they settle into their seats. Outside, Purvis and his men wait, 20 heavily armed FBI agents sweating in the summer heat, waiting for one man to walk out of a movie theater. For the next 2 hours, John Dillinger sits in that air-conditioned theater watching Manhattan melodrama. He watches Clark Gable play a gangster named Blackie Gallagher, who rises from poverty to become a powerful criminal. He watches Blackie's best friend become a district attorney. He watches their friendship fall apart as they end up on opposite sides of the law. He watches Blackie get caught, get tried, get convicted, get sentenced to death. The movie is literally about a criminal's downfall, about how crime doesn't pay, about how even the smartest criminals eventually get caught and face justice. The irony is delicious. When the movie ends around 10:30 p.m., the lights come up and Dillinger stands stretching. He's probably talking to the women about how good the film was, how much he liked it. He's completely relaxed, completely oblivious. They walk out into the lobby, then out the front doors into the warm Chicago night. It's about 85 degrees, humid, the kind of summer evening where the heat just hangs in the air. Anna, in her bright orange dress, walks slightly ahead, making sure the FBI agents can see her clearly. She's terrified, but trying to act natural. Behind her, Dillinger and Polly are chatting, probably about the movie. Agent Purvis is standing about 50 feet away, pretending to read a newspaper. The moment he sees Anna's orange dress, he lights up a cigar, the prearranged signal. Every FBI agent in the area tenses up. Safeties click off. Fingers tighten on triggers. Dillinger walks past the theater, heading toward a nearby alley, still completely unaware. He's probably thinking about getting something to eat, maybe heading back to his apartment. Purvis steps out from his position and moves up behind Dillinger. When he's about 10 feet away, he shouts, "Stick 'em up, Johnny, we have you surrounded." Dillinger's hand instinctively goes to his right pocket, where he's carrying a Colt .38 pistol. It's the last move he ever makes. 3 FBI agents open fire simultaneously. Crack, crack, crack. The first shot misses completely and hits a woman walking nearby in the leg. She screams and goes down. The second shot, fired by Agent Charles Winstead, catches Dillinger in the left side, just below his ribs. The bullet punches through his liver and exits out his back. The third shot, also from Winstead, enters through the back of Dillinger's neck, travels upward through his brain, and exits out his right eye. Dillinger stumbles forward, his hand still in his pocket, fingers wrapped around the gun he never got to draw. He takes 3 more steps, running on pure momentum, his brain already shutting down, before his legs give out. He collapses face first in the alley beside the theater, dead before he hits the ground. The smell of gunpowder hangs thick in the air. People are screaming, running in all directions. The woman who is shot in the leg is crying on the sidewalk. Polly Hamilton is screaming, trying to understand what just happened. Purvis and several other agents rush forward, guns still drawn, half expecting Dillinger to jump up shooting like he always did in the stories. This guy had a reputation for being unkillable, but when they roll him over, they can see immediately that's not happening. Blood is pooling beneath his head, dark and thick, spread across the concrete. His right eye is just gone, a massive exit wound where the bullet came out. His straw hat has fallen off, lying a few feet away, perfectly intact. Within minutes, a crowd starts to gather. Hundreds of people pour out of nearby bars, restaurants, and apartment buildings. Everyone wants to see Public Enemy #1 lying dead in an alley. The FBI agents form a perimeter, trying to keep people back, but the crowd keeps pushing forward, desperate to get close. Some people start dipping newspapers, handkerchiefs, even their fingers in Dillinger's blood as souvenirs. One woman reportedly soaked her dress hem in his blood. It's absolutely insane. This guy was a murderer and bank robber, and people are treating him like a martyred saint, collecting his blood like holy relics. When they finally load his body into an ambulance and take it to the morgue, hundreds of people follow on foot, trying to catch one last glimpse. The crowd at the morgue gets so big that police have to be called in to control it. The next day, when they search Dillinger's pockets, they find $7.80. $7.80. That's all Public Enemy number 1 had on him when he died. The guy who stole $300,000 from banks died with less than $8 in his pocket. Dillinger spent his entire life living the gangster fantasy. He loved the fame, the publicity, the movies about guys like him. He robbed banks like it was a performance, charming customers, waving to crowds, making sure the newspapers got good photos. He went to gangster movies in his free time to watch his own life played out on screen. And where did it end? In an alley next to a movie theater, having just watched a film called Manhattan Melodrama, a movie about a gangster's downfall, about crime not pain, about criminals facing justice. He walked out of a theater showing his own story and walked directly into his final scene. He died with his hand on a gun he never got to draw, outside a theater showing a movie about exactly this happening, with $8 in his pocket and a straw hat on the ground beside him. If you ask me, there's something poetic about a guy who loved gangster movies dying right after watching one. He literally lived in the fantasy until the credits rolled. Then he walked outside and the real world shot him in the face. What an insane way to go.